Your life doesn't need more pressure, it needs alignment. There is an ancient principle that makes progress feel natural instead of forced, a way of doing things that feels smooth instead of stressful. The old masters called it Wu, effortless action. But don't be fooled by the name. Wu Wei isn't doing nothing, it's removing the friction inside you so that action becomes the most natural thing in the world. And the strange part is, you've already tasted this state before, when you were so absorbed in something you loved that time disappeared. When something felt easy, not because it was simple, but because you weren't fighting yourself. Wu Wei is that feeling made intentional. To understand how it works, let me tell you about Daniel. Daniel wasn't lazy, but he felt like every day he was pushing a heavy door that refused to open. He'd wake up motivated, full of plans. But by noon, he was exhausted, overwhelmed, irritated by things he didn't even care about. It wasn't his job, it wasn't his environment, it wasn't even his goals. It was the tension inside his mind, invisible yet constant. He wanted to exercise, but his body resisted. He wanted to stay focused, but his thoughts scattered. He wanted peace, but noise filled every corner of his day. Daniel's problem is the modern problem. We try to change with force, but force creates friction. Friction destroys momentum. This is exactly what Wu Wei dissolves. And Daniel discovered this not in a temple, but in the middle of a burnout, when his entire life felt like a fight he couldn't win. One evening, after yet another day of mental chaos, he stumbled on a quote from the Tao Te Ching. "The hard and rigid will fall, the soft and yielding will overcome." He didn't understand it yet, but something in him knew this line held a truth he had been missing his whole life. This became the beginning of his 7 lessons. Lesson 1. Stop forcing, start aligning. Daniel always thought progress required pressure. Push harder, work longer, grind until something breaks. And something did break him. He noticed a pattern. When he forced himself to focus, he became more distracted. When he forced himself to be calm, he grew more anxious. When he forced himself to follow a routine, he eventually snapped out of frustration. This is what modern productivity gets wrong. Your brain is not a machine, it is a river. And when you try to push a river, it becomes turbulent. Wu Wei begins with a simple idea. Don't force what isn't flowing. Guide what already wants to move. Daniel tested this the next morning. Instead of slamming into his to-do list with panic and caffeine, he sat for 2 minutes and asked himself, what is the easiest, meaningful action I can take right now? Not the most impressive, not the most productive, just the one with the least resistance, but still pointing in the right direction. And something surprising happened. He moved, not reluctantly, not anxiously, but smoothly. That one tiny aligned action created momentum, and momentum created confidence, and confidence created calm. It was the first time in years that effort didn't feel like a fight. Lesson 2. Move at the speed of awareness, not anxiety. Daniel always believed his problem was lack of discipline, but the real issue was that he spent his entire day outrunning himself. He moved faster than his own awareness could keep up with. His body was in one place, his thoughts in another, and his attention scattered like birds in a storm. This is why nothing felt satisfying. You can't enjoy anything. Not work, not rest, not friendships, not achievements, when your mind is always 3 steps ahead of your life. Monks call this future rushing. It's the mental habit of never fully arriving. Wu Wei teaches the opposite. Move at the speed where your attention can stay whole, because happiness only exists where attention rests. Daniel tested this one afternoon. Instead of multitasking his way into another headache, he slowed down, not in laziness, but in intention. He answered one message fully, then closed the app before opening the next. He finished 1 glass of water before refilling it. He took 1 breath before speaking in a meeting. And a strange thing happened. His mind stopped buzzing. Small tasks felt cleaner, lighter, almost effortless. Mistakes dropped, stress softened. His day stopped feeling like a chase and became a sequence of complete moments instead of fractured ones. He realized something profound. Rushing is a form of fear. Presence is a form of power. When you move at the speed your awareness can stay connected, your inner resistance dissolves. You stop fighting your own nervous system. Life becomes smoother, not because it's easy, but because you're finally moving with yourself instead of against yourself. This is Wu Wei's second lesson. You don't need more speed, you need more presence. Lesson 3. Remove the unnecessary friction. Daniel always thought failure came from lack of motivation, but the truth was more subtle. He was failing because everything required friction. His environment was full of traps, his phone within reach every 5 minutes, 10 browser tabs open before he even started working, a cluttered desk that reminded him of everything left undone, a mind wired to jump between impulses like a loose electrical wire. He wasn't broken. He was simply overloaded by tiny forms of resistance. Monks call this the 1,000 small cuts. Not one big problem, but dozens of little ones eating your strength. Wu Wei teaches that effortless action becomes possible only after you remove what makes action effortful. So Daniel experimented. He placed his phone in another room. He deleted the apps that drained him. He simplified his desk until it felt like a breath of air. He organized his tasks into 3 priorities instead of 20, and instantly something clicked. Tasks felt lighter, focus came easier, the tension in his chest eased. He wasn't forcing discipline. Discipline was emerging naturally because the obstacles were gone. This is what most people misunderstand. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your environment. Change the environment and your behavior changes without a fight. Daniel learned that removing friction isn't about being productive, it's about being free. No willpower, no stress, no internal war, just smooth, natural action. This is the third lesson of Wu Wei. Before you force yourself to work harder, make the work easier to begin. Lesson 4. Flow comes from alignment, not force. Daniel used to believe that people who entered flow state had some rare gift, some superhuman focus gene he simply didn't have. But the deeper he learned about Wu Wei, the clearer it became. Flow isn't a gift. It's the natural result of doing what aligns with your nervous system. When Daniel forced himself through tasks he hated, his mind tightened, his muscles stiffened, his breath shortened, focus became warfare. But when he worked on something he genuinely cared about, even mildly, he slipped into laser focus without trying. Monks describe this beautifully. Water moves easily where the riverbed matches its shape. The problem wasn't Daniel's discipline, it was the shape of his life. So he made one simple shift. Instead of asking, how do I force myself to do this? He asked, how do I shape this task so my mind wants to flow into it? He broke overwhelming projects into pieces small enough to enjoy. He did creative tasks when his mind was most open. He handled analytical work when his energy was high. And most importantly, he stopped glorifying suffering as proof of effort. Within a week, everything felt different. Tasks that once drained him became smoother. Ideas came easier. Concentration required less effort. Because flow isn't created by pushing harder. Flow emerges when action matches your strengths, rhythms, and natural energy. Wu Wei teaches, when you stop forcing, you stop resisting. When resistance disappears, focus appears. That single insight changed Daniel's entire approach to progress. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't unfocused, he wasn't broken, he was just out of alignment. And once he corrected that, effort stopped feeling like effort. This is the fourth lesson. Don't fight your nature, shape your habits around it, and flow will meet you halfway. Lesson 5. Stillness isn't the absence of movement, but mastery of it. Daniel always equated stillness with inactivity.
Sitting still felt like wasting time. Pausing felt like falling behind. Resting felt like weakness. But monks see it differently. To them, stillness is not the absence of doing. It is the mastery that gives doing its power. One day, Daniel tried something unusual. Before starting his day, he sat completely still for 2 minutes. No phone, no thoughts he followed, no attempts to meditate perfectly. Just sitting. At first, his mind panicked. You should be working. You're wasting time. This isn't productive. That inner restlessness, that panic of pause, was the exact reason his happiness had been collapsing. Stillness reveals your internal chaos, and once revealed, it loses its power. As Daniel continued practicing small pockets of stillness, he noticed something. He began reacting less. He paused before speaking. He saw emotions as waves.
Work felt less overwhelming. Life felt less like a storm he had to outrun. This is the 5th lesson of Wu Wei. You don't find peace by escaping movement. You find peace by mastering the space within it. Lesson 6. Letting go is not losing control. It's regaining it. Daniel grew up believing that control was the key to happiness. Control your schedule, control your emotions, control your future. Control everything, or everything will collapse. But the more he tried to control life, the more anxious he became. Because control is exhausting. Life refuses to obey. When he studied Wu Wei deeper, he discovered something monks understand that most people don't. You don't need to control life to be at peace. You need to stop fighting the parts you can't control. Not surrender, not apathy, not letting the world walk over you. Just a simple shift. Stop spending your energy where you have no influence. Redirect all of it where you do. Daniel tried something radical. For 1 week, he let go of every battle he could not win. If someone was rude, he didn't carry it. If a plan fell apart, he didn't agonize over it. If the traffic was slow, he breathed instead of boiling. If a problem couldn't be solved today, he stopped trying today. And his mind softened, not because life got easier, but because he stopped wrestling shadows. Monks describe it like this: the branch that refuses to bend is the first to break. Daniel had been breaking for years, not from difficulty itself, but from resisting difficulty, as if it was an insult. Letting go felt like a release valve inside his chest. There was suddenly room to think clearly, room to act wisely, room to actually be present. And paradoxically, the less he tried to control everything, the more control he actually felt, because his energy was no longer scattered. His decisions were calmer, his responses were cleaner, and happiness began showing up in the space where tension used to live. This is the 6th lesson of Wu Wei. Letting go isn't giving up. It's choosing strength over struggle, clarity over chaos, peace over pressure. Lesson 7. The happiest life is the one lived with less effort and more meaning. Daniel used to believe happiness would arrive one day as a reward. Once he worked harder, once he improved enough, once life finally calmed down, once he reached some imaginary checkpoint. But every time he got closer, the goal moved further. Monks understand why. Happiness doesn't arrive in the future. It appears when effort aligns with meaning in the present. Wu Wei is not about laziness. It's not about doing nothing forever. It's not about meditating on a mountain until your problems disappear. It's about this. Stop fighting life. Start flowing with the direction that brings meaning, ease, and honesty. So Daniel made one final experiment. He asked himself a simple question every morning. What action today feels light and meaningful at the same time? Not the most productive, not the hardest, not the one that makes him look disciplined, just the one that felt aligned. Sometimes it was cleaning his space. Sometimes it was finishing one important task. Sometimes it was taking a slow walk to clear his mind. Sometimes it was handling a responsibility he'd been avoiding. And something unexpected happened. His days became smoother, but also deeper. He wasn't rushing, he wasn't forcing, he wasn't procrastinating, he wasn't drowning. He was simply moving through life the way nature moves through everything, without unnecessary effort. Monks compare it to rowing downstream. You still row, but you're not fighting the current anymore. Daniel began feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Actual happiness. Not a spike, not a distraction, not a dopamine hit. A quiet, steady, grounded happiness that stayed. Because meaning plus ease equals sustainable joy. This is the seventh and final lesson of Wu Wei. Happiness isn't achieved by effort, it's revealed by alignment. The more you tune in to what feels honest, the lighter life becomes.